They helped build a nation, but their names nearly disappeared from history. Today, we're bringing 12 forgotten founding fathers back to life to reveal the hidden hands behind America's birth. Number 1. John Adams, the voice nobody wanted to hear. John Adams wasn't the loudest name in history, but he was one of the first to see that independence from Britain was not just necessary, it was inevitable. Long before the Declaration of Independence was signed, Adams stood up in Congress, pushing for rebellion while others were still begging for peace. He spoke with passion, clarity, and a sharp tongue, and that didn't always win him friends. While others hesitated, John Adams nominated George Washington to lead the Continental Army and helped Thomas Jefferson draft the Declaration of Independence. He was called stubborn, difficult, and annoying, but every time the country needed someone to speak up for freedom, Adams was already on his feet, fighting with words when others stayed silent. When independence was won, Adams didn't stop. He became the first U.S. ambassador to Britain and helped rebuild the nation's identity. Then, as the second president of the United States, he kept the country out of war at a time when it could have crumbled. He wasn't flashy, and he didn't care much for popularity, but he made the hard decisions when others backed away. He was the voice nobody wanted to hear, but exactly the one the revolution needed. Number 2. Samuel Adams, the agitator who lit the fuse. Before America was born, the streets of Boston were alive with unrest, and Samuel Adams was at the center of it all. A master of protest and persuasion, he didn't fight with muskets. He fought with fiery speeches, secret meetings, and rebellious ideas. He organized resistance long before anyone else dared, turning ordinary colonists into patriots ready for revolution. Samuel helped form the Sons of Liberty, a group that stirred up protests, boycotts, and one very famous Tea Party. When the British imposed unfair taxes, he didn't just complain. He lit the fuse that turned frustration into action. His writings spread throughout the colonies, sparking debates and waking people up to the truth. They didn't have to be ruled from across the ocean. Though he signed the Declaration of Independence, Samuel never sought glory. He stayed behind the scenes, organizing, writing, and rallying support. Many British officials blamed him personally for starting the revolution, calling him dangerous and rebellious. He wore that like a badge of honor. Today, Samuel Adams is better known as a beer than a founding father, but the revolution wouldn't have started without him. He didn't lead armies or write constitutions, but he turned whispers of rebellion into a roar. He was the agitator, the fire starter, and the spark behind the storm that changed everything. Number 3. Benjamin Franklin, the diplomat who saved the war. Benjamin Franklin is often remembered as the man who flew a kite in a lightning storm, but few remember that he also saved the American Revolution without ever firing a shot. At 70 years old, Franklin was sent across the Atlantic to France with a mission that seemed impossible: convince a powerful nation to support a young, struggling country at war with the British Empire. Franklin didn't go in like a soldier. He went in like a showman. He wore plain clothes, charmed nobles with his wit, and played up the image of a wise American sage. Behind the scenes, he negotiated day and night, building relationships, hosting dinners, and writing endless letters. The French loved him, and that opened doors America desperately needed. Thanks to Franklin's efforts, France sent ships, soldiers, money, and weapons to help the Americans. Without that support, The war might have ended in defeat. But with France's help, the tide turned, and victory at Yorktown followed. Franklin didn't just bring back a treaty, he brought back hope and survival. Even after the war, Franklin helped shape the peace and signed the Constitution. He didn't ride a horse into battle, but he may have done more than anyone to win it. In the end, the man with the lightning rod turned out to be the spark that helped keep the revolution alive. Number 4. James Madison, the quiet architect of the Constitution. James Madison didn't have a booming voice or a flashy title. He wasn't a general or a firebrand. But when it came to building the foundation of the United States, he quietly became one of its most important minds. While others argued about how to fix the failing government, Madison came prepared, with an entire plan in hand. At the Constitutional Convention in 1787, Madison arrived with what became known as the Virginia Plan. It shaped everything that followed: a stronger central government, a system of checks and balances, and the idea of separate branches. While bigger names took the spotlight, Madison stayed focused on the hard part, turning big ideas into lasting structure. But his work didn't end there. When Americans worried that the new Constitution gave too much power to the government, Madison listened. He helped write the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments that guaranteed freedoms like speech, religion, and fair trials. Without him, those protections might never have made it in. Though often quiet and overlooked, Madison's fingerprints are everywhere. He was the thinker behind the scenes, the man who built the blueprint of American democracy. He didn't need to shout. He just needed the country to last, and thanks to him, it did. Number 5. John Dickinson, the founding father who opposed the Declaration. While most of the founding fathers raced toward revolution, John Dickinson stood apart. He was smart, respected, and fiercely loyal to American rights, but he believed war should be the very last option. In 1776, when the Continental Congress met to vote on independence, Dickinson shocked everyone by voting against the Declaration. He wasn't a coward. Dickinson had already written powerful documents defending American liberty, including the famous letters from a farmer in Pennsylvania. But he believed that America wasn't ready for a war with Britain and feared it would bring chaos and suffering. His decision cost him his reputation and nearly his place in history. But Dickinson didn't disappear. After independence was declared, he still joined the militia and fought to defend the country he had once hesitated to break away for. Later, he helped draft the Articles of Confederation and even played a key role in writing the U.S. Constitution. His quiet leadership helped hold the new nation together when it was still fragile. Today, Dickinson is often forgotten because he didn't sign the Declaration, but he still shaped the fight for liberty in a major way. He reminded America that courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it looks like thinking before you leap and standing for peace, even when everyone else wants war. Number 6. George Washington, the commander who nearly walked away. George Washington is often remembered as a hero carved in marble, but in real life, he came very close to giving up. During the early years of the Revolutionary War, things went from bad to worse. His army was cold, hungry, and losing battles. Supplies were low, morale was lower, and Washington, he was tired, frustrated, and full of doubt. In the darkest moments of the war, Washington once wrote that he feared the entire cause might fail. He didn't think the army would last another month. Congress barely sent help, and some even questioned his leadership. At one point, a group of officers tried to replace him behind his back, but instead of quitting, Washington stood firm. What kept him going was something bigger than pride. He believed in the idea of a free nation, a country where people ruled themselves. So he rode with his men through snow, crossed frozen rivers, and made impossible decisions under pressure. He didn't just lead, he endured, and that helped his troops do the same. When the war finally ended, Washington could have taken power for himself. Instead, he walked away. That moment, when the commander stepped down, helped define what kind of country America would be. Not a kingdom, but a republic. Not ruled by one man, but by the people. And that's the part of Washington's legacy that still changes the world today. Number 7. Haym Salomon, the banker who funded a revolution. When bullets ran low and hope was fading, one man stepped up, not with a sword, but with silver. His name was Haym Salomon, and though he never held a musket or sat in Congress, he may have done more than anyone to keep the American Revolution alive. Quietly working behind the scenes, Salomon helped raise the money that paid for troops, weapons, and supplies. Born in Poland, Salomon came to America chasing freedom and quickly became a trusted financial broker in Philadelphia. During the war, he worked as a spy, was arrested by the British, escaped, and then used his knowledge to connect powerful lenders with the struggling Continental Army. He gave everything he had, and then gave more. Salomon reportedly raised hundreds of thousands of dollars and personally loaned large sums to help George Washington and other leaders continue the fight. He never asked to be repaid. After the war, he died in poverty, having sacrificed his fortune for a dream he believed in. His tombstone reads, "He gave everything for the cause of freedom." Though history rarely mentions his name, Salomon's impact was massive. Without money, there is no war effort, and without Salomon, that money might never have come. He reminds us that not all heroes wear uniforms. Some sign checks, risk everything, and never expect a thank you in return. Number 8. Thomas Paine, the radical who lost everything. Before armies marched and declarations were signed, there were words, and no one's words were louder, bolder, or more dangerous than Thomas Paine's. With a simple pamphlet called Common Sense, Paine lit a fire in the hearts of Americans everywhere, convincing thousands that it was time to break from Britain once and for all. Paine didn't come from wealth or fame. He was an Englishman who had failed at many things before finding his voice in America. But in 1776, that voice shook the world. His writing was fiery, fearless, and clear. Common Sense sold over 100,000 copies, a huge number for the time, and gave ordinary people the courage to believe in independence. But Paine didn't stop there. He wrote The Crisis to boost troop morale and later went to France to support their revolution too. His radical ideas about equality, religion, and government eventually turned many former allies against him. He was imprisoned, criticized, and forgotten by the very country he helped inspire. Thomas Paine died poor, with only a few people at his funeral, but his ideas lived on. He was the voice of the people when it mattered most, the man who gave a struggling nation the words to believe in itself. And even now, his pen still echoes through every American who dares to speak up for freedom. Number 9. Gouverneur Morris, the man who wrote the words. When the Constitution was finally ready to be written, the Founding Fathers turned to a man with a sharp mind and an even sharper pen, Gouverneur Morris. While others debated and argued, Morris took their ideas and shaped them into something unforgettable. He didn't just write the Constitution, he gave it its voice. It was Morris who chose the powerful opening words, "We, the people of the United States." At a time when states were still thinking individually, Morris made it clear that this new nation would be united. His writing was bold, direct, and full of purpose, just like the country he hoped it would become. But Morris was more than a writer. He spoke more times at the Constitutional Convention than any other delegate. He stood against slavery, defended strong government, and wasn't afraid to challenge popular opinions. With a wooden leg and a brilliant mind, he became one of the Constitution's fiercest defenders. Today, few people know his name, but almost everyone knows his words. Gouverneur Morris didn't fight battles or lead armies, but he gave America the language to define itself. And sometimes, that's the most powerful kind of leadership there is. Number 10, George Mason, the founder who refused to sign. George Mason helped shape America's future, but when the time came to sign the Constitution, he pushed the paper away. This Virginia statesman believed in liberty so deeply that he walked away from history's biggest moment because he thought it wasn't good enough yet. Mason had already written the Virginia Declaration of Rights, which later inspired the Bill of Rights. He believed that freedom wasn't just a dream, it had to be protected in writing. So, when the Constitution was finished without any clear guarantees for individual rights, Mason stood up and said no. His refusal shocked the other delegates. How could one of the most respected thinkers walk away? But Mason didn't care about being popular. He cared about principle. He warned that without a Bill of Rights, the government could become too powerful, and one day, the people might lose their voice. He was right. 2 years later, the Bill of Rights was added, echoing the very ideas Mason had been demanding. George Mason may not have signed the Constitution, but his vision shaped what came after. He was the founder who said no, and in doing so, made America stronger. Number 11, Crispus Attucks, the first to die for American liberty. On a cold night in March 1770, before the Declaration of Independence was even imagined, a crowd gathered in Boston to protest British rule. Tensions rose, muskets were raised, and then chaos. The first man to fall was Crispus Attucks, a sailor of African and Native American descent. With that single shot, the American Revolution began. Attucks wasn't a general or a politician. He was a working man, free, bold, and fearless. He had escaped slavery and spent his life sailing, working, and resisting injustice. On the night of the Boston Massacre, he stood at the front of the crowd, daring to challenge British soldiers face to face. He died standing up for something he believed in: freedom. News of his death spread quickly. Patriot leaders like Paul Revere and Samuel Adams turned him into a symbol of resistance. Though many wanted to forget that a man of mixed heritage led the charge, others remembered him as a true hero, an American who gave everything before the war had even begun. Today, Crispus Attucks is often left out of the main story, but his sacrifice helped spark a movement that changed the world. He didn't live to see the country born, but he helped deliver its first cry for liberty. And that makes him one of the earliest and bravest founders of all. Number 12, Nathaniel Green, the general who saved the Southern campaign. When the war turned south and it looked like all might be lost, George Washington turned to a quiet but brilliant man named Nathaniel Green. He wasn't a trained soldier. He had once been a Quaker who owned a forge. But Green had something better than experience. He had strategy, courage, and the ability to turn disaster into victory. In 1780, the British were tearing through the southern colonies. Most generals had failed, but Green took command of a broken army and did something unexpected. He didn't fight to win battles. He fought to survive. He used hit-and-run tactics, stretched British supply lines, and kept his smaller army moving just fast enough to avoid destruction. His famous quote was simple: "We fight, get beat, rise, and fight again." And that's exactly what he did. Battle after battle, Green kept pressure on the British, wearing them down without needing to win every fight. His leadership helped weaken British forces and led directly to the final American victory at Yorktown. Nathaniel Green doesn't appear on most dollar bills or in flashy history books, but his role was critical. He saved the South from collapse and gave Washington the breathing room he needed to finish the war. He was the unsung hero of the Revolution, the quiet general who refused to quit when quitting would have been easy. If you enjoyed the video, please click the like button, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one.